Welcome back, guys, to Let's Build Jurassic World. Now, I know it's been a long time, so my narration might be a tiny bit rusty, but to make up for this huge kind of month gap, we've got a gigantic episode here in which we finish off the exterior of our build, but also create this modern, sleek interior, because I wanted to make this whole ride feel as if you could drop it into any sort of zoo across the world and see it as a working attraction. Now, we start off with all my builds with the very basic stuff. So we're going to begin here with that giant kind of tree trunk that crosses the enclosure and get all that kind of basic, kind of simple structure out the way, so then we can build the rest of the episode around it. So if you want to skip to that interior bit, that'll be about the 5-minute mark. But for now, let's just carry on as normal. Now, the reason it's been such a long time is my schedule at the minute was absolutely hectic. I finished a job, I restarted uni, so it's kind of getting back into all that kind of swing of things, but now my schedule's kind of calmed down a little bit and given me time to come back to the channel and let it grow again. So here we are, continuing right where we left off with Jurassic World. Now, this build is something we don't get kind of a very good look at in the film. There is obviously that shot right at the start when the kids are running around the park and seeing all the attractions, and this is one of them. You know, it's one of those key elements of that opening shot. But because the way we see it from the kids' perspective, we only ever see the interior of this attraction. So that's given me kind of a lot of creative interpretation, really, for me to go ahead and kind of imagine how I could see this whole ride working. So to basically start off simply is we're building some sort of structure here that could hold that log in place, and then within this structure, this is where the visitors will come in, they'll enter through, and then on the other side of the paddock, we're going to build the exit, which will just be an identical kind of lift structure which will let the visitors leave again, because there's no point in me doing these builds if I don't do them as a designer. That's kind of what I'm studying at university as well. As a designer, it's one of those things is I like to make things look as if they're going to work, and that is a huge kind of theme I followed with all of my builds, whether it had been the castle or the park itself. So making this build look as if it would work in the real world has been kind of essential. So here is that kind of big structure. It's kind of like a pillar that will hold that kind of log in place. So now I've put my sphere in here, and then, well, circle, and then we're going to place this big long wooden cylinder, which is obviously where the visitors will walk through. Now, I did kind of off camera do a couple of different variations of this big long log across the paddock, but so I kind of want to make it look a bit more natural, because the way this is a perfect circle, you wouldn't expect a tree to look quite like that. But after doing a lot of practice here and there, I kind of looked back and thought, I did some ones that were a bit more rough, a little bit less perfect, but they just didn't look quite as good. They just looked a bit strange in Minecraft. So we just stuck to this big kind of perfect cylinder, and once we come back later and put all the trees in, it actually adds quite a nice effect, and I don't feel like I've missed out much by not putting loads of variations in the wood itself. So back to that idea of making this look like it could actually work, we just come back here and add in a couple more steps here and there that make it look just that little bit more structurally sound, as if this log is nicely compact within both of these pillars. Now, we kind of start working from the outside in here, so I line myself up with that huge door on the other side of the paddock and bring myself into the center of that giant log. Now, obviously, it's really dark in here, and we're going to combat that by adding in those huge viewing windows and those glowstone lights running across the top of the ceiling. But then I did also have to reconsider what sort of materials I was going to use, because normally we see in these videos I use lots of greys, but because of this really dark corridor, I felt these quartz slabs work really nicely, because they look a bit like marble, and they give that really nice kind of expensive quality Jurassic World has. And it's that whole idea that John Hammond never shut up about we spared no expense. So that whole idea has kind of been enveloped into this big grand enclosure. Now, with that in mind, we spared no expense. I thought I'd add in, extra details here and there, because this is kind of interior design within Minecraft, and I thought these nice glass railings would really add to that effect, just so nobody's walking on the wooden floor. It's a big marble, corridor with a glass railing. So then I kind of come back here and start doing some really nice little kind of touch-ups, making sure the roof's kind of a nice height and smoothing it all off here and there by adding these upside down stairs. And slowly we really kind of start getting a feel, as soon as we add in these glowstone lights, of what this interior will look like. With these lights in at the roof, it kind of gives that kind of nice warm glow, especially with the shaders pack activated, that, you know, that I wanted from this. And just from this little entrance hall here, I feel we've got a really good basis to start building this whole build off, really, because this episode is basically, you know, the interior. You know, it's something I don't really do very often. Like, we did the Indominus Rex paddock and the Raptor paddock, and they had some small interiors here and there, but they were never anything to this mass scale, because both those paddocks were kind of, you know, they were temporary. They were kind of prototype paddocks, whereas this one is where the consumers come in and view the beasts in their enclosures themselves. So that had this like kind of brand new dynamic to the way I was going to do this build. Now, again, you can see me covering the very simple stuff, you know, making sure we add in these glowstone lights across the top, because once these were added, you know, and we extended the railing all the way down, you then finally, that's kind of when you get that real idea, you know, you look back and you think, yeah, this is going to work. So then I kind of zoomed out here and started thinking about how these windows are going to look, and this is kind of the only good look we have of this paddock in the film. So we need to add in some gigantic windows here, and the difficulty here was incorporating them with this big, like, you know, long wooden walkway, and making sure they didn't stick out too far, or they didn't look out of place. And you'll also notice those stone bricks along the bottom there. They were kind of an error from one of the world edit copy and paste I did, so they will be removed off camera, don't you worry about them. So now we're adding in those big windows, and it's kind of the employing of the you know, half stone slabs. I use these throughout this build because they're not quite as big and bulky. Obviously it's just a normal block, and this means I can add in subtle different kind of differences here and there, and kind of really pile them up and layer my little style over itself. And overall, when we zoom out here and I come in and go out and start making my little additions here and there, I put a little stone frame along the side, it starts really kind of coming together. And every time we zoom out, I feel this becomes more and more something that looks kind of practical and as if it could actually work. Now, I tried doing a double layer here, but when we zoom out there, you know, like, the idea, it's kind of form over function. I could have done a double layer there and kind of added it, you know, it's kind of artistic merit, you could say, but overall I feel function is much more of a priority with this. So that's why we come back here, and instead of using those half slabs, I come in and replace them just with these upside down stone stairs, as on the outside it adds another, you know, addition of function, but on the inside that smooth kind of curving roof adds that idea of form. And I feel this works really nicely. When we jump down here, I feel once we actually in the next episode build the Rex herself, the height of her and the build of it will actually line up with those windows really nicely. So now we need to start kind of working on the entrance itself. How do people come and go from this kind of ride? So what we're going to do here first is just add in one tiny little detail, and it's something I've never done before. And what these are supposed to be are those little gates. You know, you'd have an employee stood by these gates, and they'd let, you know, visitors in one by one, just to make sure the ride doesn't become overly crowded. Now you'll notice this outdoor template changed a little bit to a square one, because I did this because the square, I feel kind of the way I was trying to do that kind of semicircle one didn't suit the style of the rest of the enclosure. It looked a bit too much Jurassic Park rather than Jurassic World, so I zoomed out and redid a brand new template that's a little bit more industrial, a little bit bigger, a little bit more bulky. So, as you can see, we're now working on the windows and begin making some real progress on the entrance to the ride itself. Now, because we're using the shaders, it makes kind of daytime and light look really nice and kind of realistic, but it also makes shadows really well defined and kind of more realistic in their sense as well. And this means if you don't have enough light entering a room within my Minecraft, it can make it really feel really dark and gloomy, and obviously this is something I wanted to avoid for an entrance to a ride. So, in light of that, I made sure this whole entrance was built out of these huge glass kind of industrial windows, so it still fit with the overall style of the enclosure, but also meant that from the inside you could still make it feel really nice and inviting. So that is kind of the overarching idea I had when it came to, you know, creating this entrance. Now, this might not be a problem people have very often with, you know, just normal vanilla Minecraft, but I don't remember the last time I played, as Minecraft for me is creative mode just with shaders to build something Awesome. Now we finished this window design here, so then I obviously replicate it all the way around and for all sides of the building, again to let in as much light as possible. Now we come to a little bit of a problem here. A bit of an oversight in the very first episode was the length of the paddock itself, because that meant when we got to this bit I would have an entranceway that was 3 blocks wide, and we all know in Minecraft we only have 1 block wide doors. We don't have 2 block wide doors. Well, we do, but then we don't have 3 block wide doors. So this is a little bit of a problem for me, that in a few minutes I'm going to come back and I think I come up with a nice little simple resolution to that, because that is something I hate to do, is have 3 block wide entryways. However, in this kind of modern realistic take I've done on a Minecraft build, you know, we're not doing a castle anymore, I feel it works really nicely. So we'll come back to that in a moment. But the second problem we have is, how do visitors get up to this log? Obviously it's raised off the ground, so the Rex can still walk underneath it. So the way I came up with a solution to this was a small elevator, a little lifting floor that would raise the visitors up to this actual ride itself. So this meant I had I kind of had to look back to the days of me going to theme parks. You know, we've got some great little theme parks here in England, and obviously they're not nearly as big as the American ones, but the way they work is something I really considered here. So I put on my elevator with a very simple little door that will let people get on the elevator will rise up, and then they can go through the log and then down another elevator on the other side. So here is how I kind of approach this. So you don't want people just walking on and off the elevator willy-nilly. You need to let people on, like when you need to be able to control the flow of people. So I did this by creating another little gateway, similar to the one we had up there. You know, it's kind of something you get on a subway or anything like that. So I put in this little sort of gate here that you could imagine being opened and letting visitors onto the onto the lift. But how do we control this? So then I came down and I obviously added in this nice white quartz floor, and to accomplish that doorway, I then copied our very similar design from upstairs of the gates again to control the flow of people into this waiting room. So then we start building the waiting room, and even though you don't imagine people to be sitting down before going on the ride, I still, you know, wanted it to be nice and modern and sleek, so I made it in all the kind of sense you'd imagine. So put in these nice trees here and there and those waiting benches. Now here is when we begin working on how do we control the flow of people up and down the elevator. So I put in these little dividing walls here, and inside the dividing walls is a staff only area, and this staff only area I just built this very simple little modern desk and put a bunch of levers on it, and then a chair, and then did the same on the other side. And you can imagine if there were 2 employees sat at each of these desks, both of them could control the elevator going up and the elevator coming back down. So that is the whole idea of this premise. Now once we got here, I then rethought about the way people view the Rex. Now, even though I felt we got a good viewing angle earlier, I thought, how can we get closer to the glass without it looking silly? So I thought maybe this little step up would work. So we'll come back with the quartz. I just built this little step system, which means visitors, once they get to the windows, can walk up them and be right against the glass looking over the Rex itself. Now, you can see that was just a really simple little addition to add in, but when you come up to the glass there, you get a much better perspective. You can almost see all the way down. And then as we zoom out here, we are almost coming to the end. We need to add a couple more details here and there, but by extending that nice light shaded grey here, and then adding some more lights in here, because even though it's daytime and it works really well now, looking back, if this turned to night, you wouldn't be able to see a thing. So I went back and grabbed the glowstone design and then reapplied it here to fit in this nice frame. I didn't want the glowstone just hovering on the side of the wall. Back in the corridor, they hang from the ceiling, but here I needed something for them to dangle off. And once those are in, I feel the interior has actually basically been completed. So it's that final addition of adding all the trees to the inside of the enclosure, as well as a roof to this entranceway. Now again, that problem with light is when the sun is right above the building, it again makes the room go dark. So instead of just adding a normal big slab of, you know, concrete for the roof, I had to add in these little vent-like windows, because this means in Minecraft, when the sun's the highest in the sky, light still shines in through the top of the roof and illuminates the room. Now obviously I had to do a bit of quality control, you could call it, and go and add in all the final little details here and there, which means just these little cornerstones here that I think work quite nicely. And then obviously we need to zoom out, see everything we've done, and add in those trees. Now, we've actually finished this build. We've got that really nice interior here. We can come all the way over the roof, and it's a very simple forest here, so I just spawn that in off camera, and as we slowly zoom in, you can just see how I did it. It's really I've got some really wide spacing between these trees because I can't populate it completely yet with like dense jungle because we haven't put the Rex in, and this means I've still got room now in the next episode to build the Rex itself. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, guys. We are back on a regular schedule now, so I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon, in which we can build the Rex. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.